The sound of dirt hitting the pine coffin would haunt Emma Everett for the rest of her days. Each hollow thud a reminder that her husband Thomas lay 6 feet beneath Missouri soil, and she stood alone with 2 children and a future as uncertain as summer rain. She clutched 5-year-old Lucy's hand while 3-year-old Michael pressed against her black skirts, his face buried in the fabric as the preacher's words drifted over the assembled mourners like smoke. St. Louis stretched out behind them in the October afternoon of 1872, the Mississippi River churning brown and relentless in the distance, indifferent to her grief. Thomas had been 26 when the fever took him, burning through his body in less than a week, leaving Emma a widow at 23 with 2 babies and a rented room above the general store where Thomas had clerked. She felt eyes on her throughout the service, particularly the cold assessment of Thomas's mother, Margaret Everett, who stood across the grave with her husband Harold. They had never approved of Emma, the daughter of a seamstress who had married their only son in what they considered unseemly haste. That Emma had been 4 months pregnant with Lucy at the wedding had only confirmed their suspicions that she had trapped Thomas into marriage. Never mind that Thomas had loved her desperately, had proposed 3 times before she finally said yes, had died whispering her name. The service ended. People offered condolences that Emma barely heard, their voices merging into a meaningless drone. She needed to get the children home, needed to figure out how she would pay next month's rent, needed to breathe without feeling like her lungs had forgotten their purpose. Margaret approached as the crowd thinned, her severe black dress impeccable, not a strand of gray hair out of place beneath her mourning veil. Harold flanked her, a tall man with Thomas's same brown eyes but none of his warmth. "Emma, we need to discuss the children's future," Margaret said without preamble. Emma's arms instinctively tightened around Lucy. "Their future is with me. I am their mother." "You are a penniless widow with no means of support," Margaret replied, her voice carrying the sharp edge of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Harold and I have a proper home, resources, the ability to provide Lucy and Michael with education and opportunities you cannot possibly offer. I will find work. I can sew, I can cook, you can what? Work as a laundress, scrub floors." Margaret's mouth twisted. "Is that the life you want for Thomas's children? We are their family. We can give them everything." "I am their family," Emma said, hearing her voice crack despite her attempt at firmness. "Thomas would want them with me." Harold finally spoke, his voice deep and certain. "Thomas would want them cared for properly. Margaret is right. You have nothing to offer them but poverty and struggle." "I offer them a mother's love. Love does not put food on the table or shoes on their feet," Margaret said. She bent slightly, her face softening as she looked at Lucy. "Come here, darling. Come to grandmother." Lucy pressed closer to Emma, shaking her head. Michael had not looked up from Emma's skirt since the conversation began. Margaret straightened, her expression hardening again. "We will be in touch, Emma. Do not make this more difficult than it needs to be." They left, climbing into their carriage with its matched horses and upholstered seats, everything about them speaking of money and position. Emma stood in the cemetery as the afternoon sun slanted golden through the oak trees, watching them disappear down the road, and felt fear settle into her bones like winter cold. She walked home slowly, letting the children set the pace, Lucy asking questions about where Papa had gone and when he would come back, Michael silent but clinging to her hand. The room above the general store felt emptier than ever when they climbed the narrow stairs. Thomas's coat still hung on the peg by the door. His razor sat on the washstand. Emma had not been able to bring herself to move anything yet. She fed the children bread and butter, and the last of the soup a neighbor had brought. then put them to bed in the small bedroom they shared, lying between them until they fell asleep. Lucy cried quietly, and Emma sang the lullabies Thomas used to sing, her voice breaking on every third word. Michael said nothing, just curled against her side like he was trying to disappear into her warmth. When they finally slept, Emma returned to the main room and sat at the table, staring at Thomas's coat. She had 43 cents to her name. The rent was due in 2 weeks. She had already sold everything of value they owned to pay for the doctor, for the medicine that had not worked, for the coffin and the burial plot. The general store owner had offered his condolences, but made it clear he needed to rent the room to his new clerk, who was arriving from Illinois at the end of the month. She put her head in her hands and let herself cry for the first time since Thomas died, great gasping sobs that shook her whole body. She cried until she had nothing left, until the room had gone full dark and the sounds of St. Louis at night filtered through the window horses on cobblestones. A riverboat whistle, distant laughter from one of the saloons on the levee. Then she dried her face, lit the lamp, and began to plan. The next morning, she took the children to Mrs. Henderson, the neighbor who had offered to watch them, and set out to find work. She visited every shop, every restaurant, every respectable establishment in St. Louis that might hire a woman. The responses were all variations of the same theme. They were not hiring, they had no positions available, perhaps she should try elsewhere. Some of them looked at her with pity. Others looked through her as if she did not exist. By afternoon, she had expanded her search to the less respectable establishments. She tried the boarding houses, the laundries, the factories by the river. A laundry finally offered her work at 50 cents a day, back-breaking labor over steaming tubs for 12 hours. She took it without hesitation. She worked for 3 days before the lawyer came. His name was Mr. Pemberton, and he arrived at the general store on a Thursday afternoon dressed in an expensive suit with a leather case under his arm. Emma had just returned from the laundry, her hands raw and red, her back aching, Lucy and Michael trailing behind her up the stairs. Mr. Pemberton followed them up, introducing himself with professional courtesy that did not quite mask the distaste in his eyes as he looked at their cramped quarters. "Mrs. Everett, I represent Harold and Margaret Everett in a matter concerning their grandchildren, Lucy and Michael." Emma set down the market basket, her heart beginning to pound. "I have nothing to discuss regarding my children." "I am afraid you do." He opened his case and withdrew a sheaf of papers. "My clients are filing for custody of the minor children based on your inability to provide adequate care. They have asked me to deliver these papers and to request that you respond within 30 days. Emma took the papers with shaking hands, staring at the legal language that swam before her eyes. Words jumped out at her: unfit mother, inadequate provisions, best interests of the children. "This is not possible. I am their mother. The law recognizes that children require proper care, shelter, education, and moral guidance," Mr. Pemberton interrupted smoothly. "My clients are prepared to demonstrate that you cannot provide these necessities. They have secured affidavits from multiple witnesses attesting to your current living situation and financial circumstances. I am working. I am caring for them. You are working as a laundress and living in a single rented room. You have no family support, no savings, no prospects." He paused, and something that might have been sympathy flickered across his face. "Mrs. Everett, I have seen these cases before. The courts invariably rule in favor of the party with means to care for the children properly. You cannot win this. Then I will fight anyway." "That would be inadvisable. Legal proceedings are expensive. You would need to retain counsel, which you clearly cannot afford." My clients are willing to allow regular visitation if you cooperate. If you fight, they are prepared to argue for complete severance of your parental rights." The room tilted. Emma gripped the table's edge, forcing herself to stay upright to keep breathing. Behind her, she heard Lucy ask Michael if Mama was sick. "Get out," Emma whispered. "Mrs. Everett, get out of my home." Mr. Pemberton closed his case. "You have 30 days. I strongly encourage you to consider what is truly best for Lucy and Michael." He left. Emma stood frozen, the papers crumpling in her grip, until Lucy tugged at her skirt. "Mama, are you sad?" Emma knelt and pulled both children into her arms, holding them so tightly Lucy squeaked in protest. "I love you both so very much. Do you understand? More than anything in this world." "We love you too, Mama," Lucy said, patting Emma's cheek with small, soft hands. That night, after the children slept, Emma read through the papers properly. The legal language was dense and intimidating, but the message was clear. Harold and Margaret Everett were using their wealth and social position to take her babies, and they had the law on their side. She had no money for a lawyer, no family to support her, no husband to protect her rights. In 1872, a widow's claim to her children was only as strong as her ability to provide for them, and Emma had nothing. She considered running. She could take the children and disappear, head west where the law was more suggestion than mandate, where land was cheap, and a woman determined enough might carve out a life. But she had no money for train fare, no wagon, no supplies. She would get perhaps a day away before Harold and Margaret tracked them down, and then her situation would be infinitely worse. She spent a week searching desperately for another option. She tried to borrow money but had nothing for collateral. She visited churches, but their charity extended only to sympathy and prayers. She even swallowed her pride and went to the Everett house, a grand 3-story brick edifice in the fashionable part of St. Louis, and begged Margaret to reconsider. Margaret received her in the parlor, a room that cost more to furnish than Emma had earned in her entire life. She listened to Emma's pleas with an expression of patient condescension, then said, "This is not personal, Emma. We are thinking of the children's welfare. Surely even you can see that they will have better lives with us. They need their mother. They need security, education, and proper social standing. We can provide all of that. You cannot." Margaret poured tea from a silver service, not offering Emma any. "Thomas married beneath himself. We accepted that because he loved you, but we will not allow his children to suffer for his poor judgment. They are Everett's. They deserve an Everett upbringing. Thomas wanted me to raise them. Thomas is dead." Margaret's voice turned cold. "And if you truly love your children, you will recognize that your feelings matter less than their futures." Emma left with her last hope extinguished. She returned to the room above the general store and stared at the wall, trying to think of something, anything, that might save them. The answer came from an unexpected source. She was at the laundry the next day, scrubbing sheets until her knuckles bled, when one of the other women mentioned that her cousin's husband worked at the courthouse. "Heard there was some fancy custody case being filed," the woman said. "Rich folks trying to take some poor widow's babies. Shame, ain't it?" Another woman snorted. "Rich folks always get what they want. That is how the world works." "Maybe," the first woman said, "but Mary's husband said there might be a way around it. Said he heard of a case once where a woman remarried real quick, and the judge decided she could keep the children since she had a husband to provide for them. Course, she had to find a man willing to marry her first." The words circled in Emma's head all day. Remarry. Find a husband. It seemed impossible. She had loved Thomas, could not imagine replacing him, but what choice did she have? If marriage was the only way to keep Lucy and Michael, she would marry a stranger. The problem was finding a man. She had no prospects, no time to court anyone properly, and no idea how to even begin. She spent another sleepless night wrestling with the idea, hating herself for considering it, hating Harold and Margaret for forcing her to this, hating the world that made a woman's value dependent on having a man to legitimize her existence. By morning, she had made her decision. She would find a husband, by whatever means necessary. St. Louis had no shortage of men. The city teemed with riverboat workers, railroad laborers, cowboys bringing cattle north from Texas, prospectors heading west to seek their fortunes. Emma began frequenting the market, the church social events, anywhere respectable that a single man might be found. But single men were not interested in marrying a penniless widow with 2 small children and a legal battle looming. The few who expressed interest made it clear they expected something quite different from marriage. 2 weeks passed. The 30-day deadline loomed closer. Emma grew desperate enough to consider answering one of the matrimonial advertisements in the newspaper, those columns where men seeking wives described themselves and their prospects. But none of them were in St. Louis, and she could not leave the city while the custody case was pending. She was walking home from the laundry on a Friday evening, exhausted and defeated, when she saw the fight. It happened outside the Riverfront Saloon, a rough establishment that catered to the men who worked the docks and the cattle drives. 2 men were shouting at each other, drawing a crowd. Emma would have walked past. She had learned to avoid such situations, but one of the men threw a punch, and the fight spilled into the street directly in front of her. She jumped back just in time to avoid being knocked down. The 2 men grappled in the dirt, trading blows while the crowd cheered and placed bets. Emma looked for a way around them, but more men had poured out of the saloon, and she found herself trapped against a storefront. Then a 3rd man stepped out of the crowd and separated the fighters with an ease that suggested significant strength. He grabbed each man by the collar and hauled them apart, his voice cutting through the noise. "That is enough. Take it somewhere else, or I will finish it for both of you." Something in his tone made both fighters reconsider. They stumbled away in opposite directions, still trading insults but no longer throwing punches. The crowd dispersed, disappointed by the abrupt ending. The man who had stopped the fight stood for a moment, dusting off his hands, then turned and saw Emma pressed against the storefront. "Apologies, madam. Did those fools frighten you?" Emma found herself looking at a cowboy, tall and lean with sun-darkened skin and light brown hair that needed cutting. He wore dusty range clothes and scuffed boots, a hat pushed back on his head, and he had the bluest eyes Emma had ever seen. She judged him to be around 28 or 29, with a face that was handsome in a weathered, lived-in way. "I am fine, thank you," Emma managed. "You should not be walking alone in this part of town after dark," he said, not unkindly. "Can I escort you somewhere safer?" Emma knew she should refuse. She should thank him politely and hurry home. But something made her hesitate, perhaps the genuine concern in his eyes, perhaps the desperation that had been gnawing at her for weeks, perhaps the simple fact that he had stopped a fight instead of joining it. "Actually," she heard herself say, "could I speak with you for a moment?" He looked surprised but tipped his hat. "Of course, madam. My name is Samuel Irving. Most folks call me Sam. Emma Everett." They moved away from the saloon to a slightly more respectable corner. Sam waited patiently while Emma tried to figure out how to possibly explain what she needed. The whole idea suddenly seemed insane. She was about to apologize and leave when he spoke first. "You look like someone carrying a heavy burden, Mrs. Everett. Anything I can help with?" The kindness in his voice broke something open inside her. Before she could stop herself, the whole story came pouring out: Thomas's death, the in-laws, the custody papers, her desperate need for a husband to satisfy the court. Sam listened without interrupting, his expression growing increasingly serious. When she finished, she felt mortified. "I apologize. I should not have burdened you with all of that. I do not know what I was thinking." "You were thinking you need help," Sam said slowly. "And I am in a position to offer it." Emma stared at him. "What? I need a wife." "I beg your pardon." Sam pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his hair, looking almost embarrassed. "I have land. Good land, 200 acres about 30 miles southwest of here. I have been building a ranch, running cattle, making a go of it. But it is lonely work and I am tired of doing it alone. I have been thinking about finding a wife, but I am not much good at courting and such. This might sound crazy, but what if we helped each other? You are suggesting marriage. To a stranger. People marry strangers all the time through those newspaper advertisements. At least we have met face to face." He held up his hands. "I am not saying I am any great prize. I am a cowboy with a small ranch and no fancy manners. But I am honest, I work hard, and I would treat you and your children right. You need a husband to keep your babies. I need a wife and could use a family. Seems like it might work out for both of us." Emma's heart was racing. "You would take on 2 children who are not your own, and a custody battle with wealthy in-laws. I am not afraid of a fight, and I have always wanted children. Far as I am concerned, if I marry you, they become mine to protect." He met her eyes steadily. "I am not promising love, Mrs. Everett. I do not know you well enough for that. But I can promise respect, protection, and a home. That is more than many marriage offers include." Emma's mind spun. This was insane. She had known this man for less than 10 minutes, but what choice did she have? The deadline was 2 weeks away. This might be her only chance. "Why would you do this?" she asked. "What do you really want from me?" "Companionship, help with the ranch, someone to come home to." He shrugged. "Maybe children of our own someday if you were willing, but mostly just not being alone anymore. I lost my whole family to cholera 5 years back, parents, 2 brothers, a sister. Been on my own ever since. Gets old after a while." Something in the way he said it made Emma believe him. She recognized the loneliness in his eyes because she saw it in her own mirror every morning. "I loved my husband," she said quietly. "I am not looking for romance. I understand. This would be a practical arrangement. We would figure out the rest as we go. The children have to come first, always." "Agreed. And if it does not work, if you change your mind, I do not change my mind once it is made up. If we do this, I am in it for the long run. That is how I operate." Emma took a shaky breath. Every rational part of her screamed that this was reckless, dangerous, foolish. But the part of her that was a mother, the part that would do anything to keep Lucy and Michael, was already reaching for this lifeline. "Can I meet you tomorrow?" she asked. "Bring the children, let you meet them properly, make sure this is really what you want." "That is a sensible idea." "Where and when?" They arranged to meet at the park near the river the following afternoon. Emma walked home in a daze, unable to quite believe what she had just set in motion. She lay awake all night, alternating between hope and terror, wondering if Sam would even show up or if she had just imagined the entire encounter. But when she arrived at the park the next day with Lucy and Michael in tow, Sam was already there, cleaned up and wearing what appeared to be his best shirt. He had even shaved, revealing a strong jawline and a small scar along his left cheekbone. He knelt down to the children's level immediately. "Hello there, you must be Lucy and Michael. I am Sam." Lucy, always braver than her brother, regarded him seriously. "Are you a cowboy?" "I am. I have a ranch with horses and cattle." "You have a dog, 2 of them. Big mutts named Bear and Ranger. Can I pet them?" "If your mama says yes, you surely can." Michael stayed behind Emma, peeking around her skirts. Sam did not push, just smiled at him gently. "That is okay, Michael. You take your time. I am a stranger and you are being smart." They spent an hour in the park. Sam talked about his ranch, told stories about his cowboy days on the trail drives, carved a little horse out of wood for Lucy with a pocket knife. He was patient with the children, neither overly enthusiastic nor dismissive. Emma watched him carefully, looking for any sign of deception or ulterior motive, but saw only genuine warmth. When the children ran off to chase ducks by the pond, Emma and Sam sat on a bench together. "They are good kids," Sam said. "They are my whole world. I can see that." He paused. "Have you thought more about my offer?" "I have thought of little else. Sam, I need to be honest with you. I do not know if I can ever love anyone the way I love Thomas. This would be a marriage of convenience, at least at first. At first is all I am asking for. Who knows what might happen down the road?" He looked at her seriously. "Emma, I am not asking you to forget your husband or to pretend feelings you do not have. I am just asking for a chance. We build something together, see where it goes. Maybe it becomes more. Maybe it stays a partnership. Either way, we face life together instead of alone. That has to count for something. What if your in-laws fight harder because I remarried? What if they say I am being improper or rushing into things? Let them try. A husband has rights that a widow does not. The law will be on our side once we are married, and I may not have their money, but I have friends and I know how to fight for what is mine." His voice turned fierce. "Those children would be mine, Emma. I do not take that lightly. No one would take them from us without going through me first." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "Why are you doing this? Really?" Sam was quiet for a moment, watching Lucy show Michael how to throw bread to the ducks. "Because I know what it is like to lose everyone. Because I see a woman fighting for her children with everything she has, and that is something worth supporting. And because sometimes you meet someone and just know they are supposed to be in your life, even if you cannot explain why." He looked at her. "I felt that when I saw you yesterday. Might be foolish, might be wrong, but I am going to trust it anyway." Emma made her decision. "When would we do this? Tomorrow, if you want. I can get a license, find a preacher. No point waiting when the clock is ticking." "Tomorrow," Emma repeated, her voice faint. "I would be your wife tomorrow. Only if you are sure. I will not push you into anything." Emma thought of Lucy's laughter, of Michael's small hand in hers, of the custody papers sitting on her table like a death sentence. "I am sure." They married the next day in a quick ceremony at a small church on the outskirts of St. Louis. The preacher's wife and Sam's ranch hand, a grizzled old cowboy named Pete, served as witnesses. Emma wore her best dress, a simple gray thing she had made herself. Sam wore the same clean shirt from the day before. Lucy and Michael stood beside them, confused but trusting, when the preacher said, "You may kiss the bride." Sam leaned in and pressed a chaste, gentle kiss to Emma's lips. His mouth was warm and brief, and Emma felt nothing but a strange sense of unreality, like she was watching someone else's life unfold. They stayed in St. Louis for 3 more days while Sam filed the paperwork with the court, informing them of Emma's changed circumstances. Mr. Pemberton appeared with Harold and Margaret in tow, their faces red with fury. "This is outrageous," Harold blustered. "An unseemly, rushed marriage clearly designed to circumvent our legitimate concerns about the children's welfare." "My wife's marriage is legal and proper," Sam said calmly. "And I am now the children's legal father. If you want to continue with your custody claim, you are welcome to try, but you will be fighting me as well as Emma." Margaret looked Sam up and down with withering disdain. "A cowboy." "She married a cowboy. You expect us to believe this is a legitimate marriage and not some sordid arrangement." "I do not care what you believe, madam," Sam replied, his voice still polite but with an edge of steel underneath. "Emma is my wife. Lucy and Michael are my children. That is all that matters. Mr. Pemberton conferred quietly with the Everetts, then turned back to them. My clients wish to continue with their petition. We will argue that this marriage is a fraud and that Mrs. Irving is still unfit to care for the children. The court hearing was scheduled for 2 months later, giving them time to establish the legitimacy of their marriage. Sam took Emma and the children to the ranch the day after, loading their few possessions into a wagon and heading southwest into Missouri's rolling hills. Emma sat beside Sam on the wagon bench. Lucy and Michael nestled in the back among blankets and supplies, and watched St. Louis disappear behind them. She was leaving everything she had ever known, the city where she had been born, where she had met and married Thomas, where her husband was buried. She was heading into the unknown with a man she had known for less than a week, trusting him with everything she had left. Sam must have sensed her thoughts. You can visit Thomas's grave whenever you want. The ranch is not that far. I would never ask you to forget him. Thank you, Emma whispered. You are scared. That is natural, but I promise you, Emma, I will do right by you and those children. You have my word. Emma nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She watched the landscape change as they left the city behind dense urban streets, giving way to farms, forests, open land. The afternoon sun painted everything gold. Lucy chattered excitedly about seeing the ranch, while Michael dozed against the blankets. They arrived at sunset. The ranch sat in a valley between wooded hills. A sturdy cabin with a barn, a corral and pastures where cattle grazed. It was modest but well maintained, and Emma felt something loosen in her chest at the sight of it. There was space here, room to breathe, none of the cramped desperation of their St. Louis tenement. Sam helped her down from the wagon, his hand steady on her waist. It is not much, but it is home. I built the cabin myself. Emma walked toward the house, taking in the covered porch, the neat garden plot, the curtains in the windows. You have curtains. My mother made those before she died. I kept them. Sam lifted Michael down while Lucy scrambled out on her own. There are 2 bedrooms. The children can share one. I will sleep on the porch for now, give you privacy. Sam, this is your home. You should not have to. Emma, we may be married on paper, but I know this is not a real marriage yet. I am not going to push you. You tell me when you are ready for anything more, and until then, I am fine on the porch. Emma felt a rush of gratitude and something else she could not quite name. That is very kind. It is just decent. The first few weeks were an adjustment. Emma had never lived on a ranch, never cooked on a wood stove in a cabin, never dealt with cattle or chickens or the endless chores that came with rural life. But she learned quickly, driven by determination and helped by Sam's patient teaching. He showed her how to milk the cow, tend the garden, manage the household in this new environment. He was good with the children, always gentle, never impatient, and gradually Michael began to warm to him. Emma found herself watching Sam when he did not notice the way he moved with easy confidence, the way he laughed at Lucy's jokes, the way he came in exhausted from working the ranch all day, but still took time to carve Michael a toy horse to match Lucy's. He was nothing like Thomas, who had been scholarly and soft-spoken and more comfortable with books than physical labor. Sam was all action and competence, a man who solved problems with his hands and his back. She did not love him. She reminded herself of that constantly. This was a practical arrangement. He had saved her children, and she was grateful, but gratitude was not love. Still, something was growing between them. Emma felt it in the way Sam smiled when she brought him lunch in the fields, in the way his hand lingered when he helped her over rough ground, in the quiet conversations they had in the evenings after the children were asleep. They talked about everything, their childhoods, their dreams, their losses. Sam told her about watching his family die one by one from cholera, about the guilt of being the only survivor. Emma told him about falling in love with Thomas, about the joy and terror of becoming a mother, about the consuming fear of losing Lucy and Michael. "You will not lose them," Sam said firmly. "I promise you that." The court date approached. Sam hired a lawyer, spending money he could ill afford but insisting it was necessary. They traveled back to St. Louis for the hearing, leaving the children with Pete and his wife Martha, who lived on a neighboring property. The hearing was held in a wood-paneled courtroom that smelled of old books and furniture polish. Harold and Margaret sat with Mr. Pemberton and another lawyer, both men looking expensive and confident. Emma sat with Sam and their lawyer, a younger man named Mr. Davis who had less experience but seemed earnest and prepared. The judge was an older man with iron-gray hair and a stern expression. He listened as Mr. Pemberton laid out the Everett's case, Emma's poverty, her rushed remarriage, her unsuitability as a mother. They presented affidavits from neighbors describing her previous living situation, from Thomas's employer discussing her financial circumstances, even from people Emma had never met claiming to have concerns about her character. It was brutal. Emma sat listening to her life dissected and criticized, her love for her children questioned, her marriage to Sam dismissed as a fraud. She felt Sam's hand find hers under the table, his grip strong and steady. Then it was their turn. Mr. Davis called Sam to the stand. "Mr. Irving, please tell the court about your marriage to Emma Everett." Sam sat straight, his voice clear and honest. "I met Emma when she was in a desperate situation. Her husband had died and his parents were trying to take her children. I offered to marry her to help, but it has become much more than that. Emma is a wonderful mother, a hard worker, and a good woman. I am proud to call her my wife. And those children, Lucy and Michael, I love them like they were my own blood. I would do anything for them." "Did you marry Emma only to help her keep her children?" "I married her because I saw someone worth standing beside. The circumstances were unusual, but the commitment is real. I made vows before God, and I intend to keep them." Mr. Pemberton cross-examined him, trying to poke holes in his testimony, suggesting the marriage was fraudulent, implying Sam had ulterior motives. But Sam never wavered, never got defensive, just answered every question with calm honesty. Then Emma took the stand. She spoke about her love for Lucy and Michael, about building a life with Sam, about the home they were creating together. She admitted her previous poverty but emphasized her current stability. "Mrs. Irving," Mr. Pemberton said, his voice dripping with condescension, "is it not true that you married Mr. Irving less than a week after meeting him?" "Yes." "And you expect this court to believe that is a legitimate marriage?" "I expect this court to understand that I did what was necessary to protect my children. But what started as necessity has become something more. Sam has shown me nothing but kindness and respect. He has given my children a home and a father. Whether you believe in our marriage or not, it is real, and it is legal, and it provides Lucy and Michael with exactly what they need." "What about what your late husband would have wanted?" Emma felt tears sting her eyes but kept her voice steady. "Thomas would have wanted our children raised by someone who loves them. Sam loves them. I love them. That is what Thomas would have wanted." The judge called a recess to consider his decision. Emma and Sam waited in the hallway, both too nervous to talk. An hour passed, feeling like a lifetime. Finally, they were called back in. The judge looked at both parties, his expression giving nothing away. "I have considered the arguments and evidence presented by both sides. This is a difficult case. The court recognizes the Everett's concern for their grandchildren and their ability to provide material advantages. However, the law is clear that a parent's rights are paramount unless they are demonstrably unfit. Emma Irving is no longer a penniless widow. She has remarried and established a stable home. While the timeline of her remarriage is unusual, I find no evidence that the marriage is fraudulent or that Mr. Irving is unfit to serve as the children's father. Therefore, I am ruling in favor of the Irvings. Lucy and Michael will remain with their mother and stepfather. Emma's knees nearly buckled with relief. Sam caught her elbow, steadying her. Across the room, Margaret made a sound like a wounded animal. "Your Honor, this is outrageous," Harold protested. "We have the means to give those children advantages that a cowboy never could. Money is not the only measure of a good home, Mr. Everett. The children have a mother who loves them and is now in a position to care for them properly. This court will not remove children from a fit parent simply because wealthier relatives exist." The judge banged his gavel. Case dismissed. Mr. Pemberton conferred urgently with the Everetts, but there was nothing more they could do. The law had spoken. Lucy and Michael were safe. Emma turned to Sam and without thinking threw her arms around his neck. He caught her, holding her close, and for the first time since Thomas died, Emma felt truly safe. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, thank you, thank you. You do not have to thank me. We are family now." They left the courthouse and started the journey home. Emma felt lighter than she had in months, like a crushing weight had been lifted from her shoulders. When they reached the ranch and told Pete and Martha the news, there was celebrating with coffee and cake Martha had baked. Lucy and Michael were confused by all the adult happiness, but caught the mood, running around the cabin shrieking with laughter. Sam scooped Michael up and tossed him in the air, catching him securely while the boy giggled. Emma watched them and felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. That night, after the children were asleep, Emma and Sam sat on the porch together. It had become their routine, these quiet evening talks under the stars. But tonight felt different. The tension that had carried them through the past weeks had broken, leaving them in unfamiliar territory. "I do not know how I can ever repay you for what you have done," Emma said quietly. "You do not owe me anything, Emma. You gave up your freedom, your chance to marry someone you actually loved, just to help a stranger. That is not nothing." Sam was quiet for a moment. "What if it was not just to help a stranger? What if I wanted to do it? Sam, I am not saying you have to feel anything you do not feel, but I need you to know that this has stopped being just an arrangement for me." He turned to look at her in the starlight. "I care about you, Emma. Really care about you. I think I started caring that very first night when you were brave enough to ask a stranger for help. And every day since, watching you with the children, seeing how strong you are, how kind, how determined I have been falling for you, and I do not know how to stop." Emma's breath caught. "Sam, I cannot, Thomas, I know. I am not asking you to forget Thomas or to feel something you are not ready for. I just needed you to know where I stand. Take whatever time you need. I will be here." He stood and went to his pallet on the other end of the porch, leaving Emma alone with her whirling thoughts. She lay awake for hours that night, staring at the ceiling of her room. What Sam had said terrified her because part of her wanted to feel the same way. She had been noticing him more lately, the way his face lit up when he smiled, the gentleness of his hands, the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her. She liked talking to him, liked working beside him, liked the feeling of partnership they had built. But loving him felt like a betrayal of Thomas. How could she move on so quickly? Thomas had only been dead a few months. What kind of wife replaced her husband so easily? Except it was not easy. Nothing about this was easy. Emma got up and walked to the window, looking out at the porch where Sam slept. She could see his form in the darkness, one arm thrown over his head, his breathing steady. He had given her everything without asking for anything in return. He had become a father to her children, a partner in building a life, a friend when she needed one most. Maybe it was not about replacing Thomas. Maybe it was about honoring everything Thomas had wanted for her by choosing to keep living. The thoughts circled in her mind for days. She watched Sam with new awareness, seeing not just the kind man who had saved her children, but the man himself, strong and patient and funny, with a good heart and steady hands. She noticed the way he looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention, like she was something precious. She noticed how careful he was never to push or demand, always giving her space and choice. Winter came to Missouri with cold winds and early snow. The ranch work shifted to indoor tasks, repairing equipment, maintaining the barn, keeping everyone warm and fed. Sam showed Emma and the children how to make the most of the fireplace, how to layer clothes for warmth, how to stay safe when the weather turned harsh. One evening in late December, a blizzard hit. Snow fell so thick they could not see past the porch, wind howling around the cabin like a living thing. Sam came in from securing the barn, covered in snow, his face red from cold. "That is quite a storm," he said, stomping snow off his boots. "Good thing we are all snug inside." Emma helped him out of his coat, her hands brushing his cold ones. "You are freezing. Sit by the fire." She made him hot coffee and wrapped a blanket around his shoulders. The children played on the floor nearby, building towers with wooden blocks Sam had made. The cabin felt like its own small world, sealed off from everything else by snow and wind. "This reminds me of winters when I was a boy," Sam said, warming his hands on the coffee cup. "My whole family would huddle around the fire, my pa telling stories, my ma singing. I thought I would never have that again." "You have it now," Emma said softly. Sam looked at her, something vulnerable in his eyes. "Do I?" Emma's heart pounded. She knew what he was asking. She had known for weeks that she would have to answer eventually. Looking at him now, snow still melting in his hair, this man who had given her everything, she knew what her answer was. "Yes," she said. "You do." Sam set down his coffee cup slowly. "Emma, what are you saying?" "I am saying that I have been thinking about what you told me, about how you feel. And I have been trying to figure out what I feel." She took a shaky breath. "I will always love Thomas. He gave me Lucy and Michael, and he loved me when no one else did. But he is gone, and I am still here, and you are here. And somewhere along the way, you stopped being just the man who saved us and became someone I cannot imagine living without." "Emma," his voice was rough, "I am saying that I am ready for this to be a real marriage, if you still want that." Sam crossed the space between them in 2 steps, cupping her face in his hands. "Are you sure? I do not want you to feel pressured or obligated, I am sure." He kissed her then, not the polite peck from their wedding day, but a real kiss, deep and searching. Emma kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, and felt something bloom in her chest that she had thought was dead: hope, desire, the possibility of happiness. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Sam rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Emma. I have loved you for weeks, maybe from that very first day." "I love you too," Emma whispered, and realized it was true. She had fallen for this cowboy with the gentle hands and fierce heart, this man who had fought for her children like they were his own. "I really do." That night, Sam moved from the porch into Emma's bedroom. They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other in the firelight while the blizzard raged outside. Emma cried a little, overwhelmed by the feeling of being wanted, being cherished, being held. Sam kissed her tears away and murmured that he had her, that she was safe, that he would never let her go. Afterward, lying in Sam's arms, Emma felt something she had not felt in months: peace. This was different from what she had with Thomas, but it was good. It was real. It was hers. The winter passed in a haze of settling into their new reality. Emma and Sam learned each other's rhythms, figured out how to be partners not just in name but in truth. They laughed together, worked together, built a life that felt increasingly solid. Lucy and Michael blossomed on the ranch, growing stronger and happier, calling Sam Pa without anyone having to suggest it. Spring arrived with green hills and new calves. Sam taught Michael how to feed the chickens while Emma taught Lucy to sew. They planted a bigger garden together, all four of them working the soil, and Emma felt a bone-deep satisfaction at the sight of her family building something that would sustain them. One afternoon in April, Pete rode over with news. Heard in town that Harold and Margaret Everett left St. Louis. Moved back east to Philadelphia to be near her sister. Emma felt Sam's hand find hers. So they have given up, seems like it. Judge's ruling must have convinced them they could not win. After Pete left, Emma sat on the porch and cried not from sadness but from relief. It was truly over. Her children were safe. No one could take them away. Sam held her while she wept, rocking her gently. You are okay now, we all are. By summer, Emma was pregnant. She told Sam one evening after the children were asleep, nervous about how he would react. They had not discussed having children together and she worried it might be too soon, too much. But Sam's face lit up like sunrise. Really? We are having a baby? Yes. I think I am about 3 months along. The baby should come in January. Sam whooped and picked her up, spinning her around until she was dizzy and laughing. Then he set her down carefully, his expression turning protective. Are you feeling all right? Do you need anything? Should you be resting more? I am fine. Women have babies all the time. Not my wife. My wife is carrying my child, and I am going to take care of both of you. He was true to his word. As Emma's belly grew, Sam took on extra chores to lighten her load. He brought her tea in the mornings when nausea made her queasy, rubbed her feet in the evenings when they ached, built a cradle from oak wood with such care that Emma cried when she saw it. Lucy was excited about becoming a big sister again. Michael seemed confused but interested. Both children liked putting their hands on Emma's belly to feel the baby kick. What do you hope it is? Emma asked Sam one night as they lay in bed, his hand spread over her stomach. Healthy. That is all that matters. But if you could choose, I do not know. Another daughter would be sweet. A son would be nice too. I truly do not care as long as everyone comes through all right. The baby arrived on a cold January night in 1874, a year and a half after Thomas died. Emma's labor was long and difficult, leaving Sam pacing the main room while Martha attended Emma in the bedroom. When the baby finally came, Martha emerged with a squalling infant wrapped in blankets. You have a son, Sam, a healthy boy. Sam's hand shook as he took his son, staring down at the tiny red face with an expression of absolute wonder. He is perfect. Go show Emma, Martha said, smiling. Sam entered the bedroom where Emma lay exhausted but smiling. He placed their son in her arms, and Emma looked down at the baby who had Sam's nose and her dark hair. What should we name him? She asked. Sam was quiet for a moment. What about Thomas, after your first husband? He should be remembered too. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Sam, you do not have to, I want to. Thomas was part of your life, part of Lucy and Michael's lives. He deserves to be honored. And maybe our son can carry that name forward, make it mean something new. So they named him Thomas Samuel Irving, a bridge between Emma's past and future. Little Thomas was a good baby, quiet and calm, and his siblings adored him. Lucy helped Emma change diapers while Michael brought her whatever she needed, both children proud of their role in caring for their baby brother. The ranch prospered. Sam's hard work and smart management paid off in cattle sales that brought in good money. They built an addition to the cabin, adding more bedrooms and a proper kitchen. Emma started selling her sewing in town, bringing in extra income. Life was not easy. Ranch work never was, but it was good, filled with purpose and love. 2 years later, Emma gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah. Then another son, James, came along the year after that. The cabin rang with children's laughter and chaos, and Sam moved through it all with patience and joy, treating all 5 children exactly the same, making no distinction between the ones who carried his blood and the ones who did not. One evening, when Emma was 31 and Sam was 36, they sat on the porch watching their children play in the yard. Lucy was 13 now, growing into a beautiful young woman. Michael was 11, already showing signs of inheriting Sam's skill with horses. Thomas was 7, James was 5, and Sarah was 6, all 3 of them tumbling in the grass with Bear and Ranger, who were older and slower but still patient with the children. "You ever think about how we started?" Emma asked, leaning against Sam's shoulder. "Sometimes. Seems like a lifetime ago. I was so scared I thought I had lost everything. You had lost a lot, but you kept fighting. Because of you, you saved me, Sam." He turned to look at her, the evening light catching in his blue eyes. "No, you saved yourself. You just let me help." Emma kissed him, slow and sweet, the kind of kiss that came from years of knowing someone, of building a life together through hard work and joy and struggle. "I love you. I love you too. Every single day I love you more." They sat together as the sun set, watching their children play, listening to their laughter drift across the Missouri hills. Emma thought about Thomas sometimes, remembered him with love and gratitude for the gift of Lucy and Michael, but she no longer ached for him the way she once had. She had built a new life, found a new love, created a family that was messy and loud and absolutely perfect. The custody battle that had once terrified her was now just a memory, a dark chapter that had led to unexpected blessings. Harold and Margaret had never returned to Missouri, never reached out to see their grandchildren. It was their loss. Lucy and Michael did not need grandparents who saw them as possessions rather than people. As the stars came out, Sam called the children in for dinner. They trooped inside, bringing noise and energy and dirt from the yard. Emma laughed and helped them wash up, organizing the chaos with practiced ease. Sam lifted Sarah onto his shoulders to make her laugh, then swung James around while Thomas tugged at his sleeve asking about tomorrow's chores. They ate dinner around the big table Sam had built, everyone talking over each other, sharing stories from their day. Emma looked around at her family, at Sam's face lit up with laughter, at her children growing strong and happy, at the home they had built together, and felt her heart swell with gratitude. This was not the life she had imagined when she stood at Thomas's grave, broken and desperate. This was something she never could have dreamed of asking for, but it was hers, every chaotic, beautiful, imperfect piece of it. After dinner, Sam helped Emma clean up while the older children got the younger ones ready for bed. It was their routine, this partnership where they moved around each other with easy familiarity, anticipating needs and sharing burdens. "Lucy mentioned she wants to start helping with cattle drives next summer," Sam said, drying dishes. "Says she is old enough to learn the business." "She is only 13. I was working cattle at 13. She is strong and smart. If she wants to learn, I will teach her." Emma smiled. Sam had never treated Lucy any differently because she was a girl. He taught her everything he taught Michael: how to rope cattle, mend fences, manage the ranch. Lucy would have opportunities Emma never dreamed of at her age. What about Michael? He mentioned wanting to learn the books, the financial side. Then we will get him books on ranching business. Each child gets to follow where their interests lead. That is the advantage of having land, and means we can let them choose their own paths. It was one of the things Emma loved most about Sam, his belief that people should be free to become who they were meant to be, regardless of convention or tradition. Later, after all the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Emma and Sam went to their room. Sam pulled her into his arms, and they swayed together to music only they could hear. "Happy?" he asked. "More than I ever thought possible. Me too. Every day with you is better than the one before." They made love slowly, tenderly, in the way of people who knew each other intimately and still found wonder in the connection. Afterward, Emma lay with her head on Sam's chest, listening to his heartbeat, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing. "Sam, thank you for being stubborn enough to stop that fight, for talking to a desperate widow, for taking a chance on us." His arms tightened around her. "Thank you for being brave enough to ask for help, for giving me a family, for loving me even when you thought you could not love anyone again." They fell asleep tangled together, and Emma dreamed of the future, of watching her children grow, of growing old with Sam, of all the years still ahead of them. She dreamed of Lucy's wedding someday, of Michael taking over the ranch management, of Thomas and James and Sarah finding their own paths. She dreamed of more sunsets on the porch, more dinners around the table, more quiet moments with the man who had saved her and then given her a reason to live again. The years rolled forward. Lucy did learn the cattle business and proved better at it than anyone expected, eventually taking over most of the day-to-day operations. Michael studied ranch management and finance, turning their modest operation into one of the most successful in the county. Thomas became a veterinarian, the first in the family to pursue professional education. James followed in Sam's footsteps as a cowboy, working trail drives and loving every minute of it. Sarah became a teacher, opening a school for ranch children in the area. All 5 children grew up knowing they were loved equally, that family was not about blood but about choice and commitment. They knew the story of how their parents met, how a desperate widow and a lonely cowboy had found each other and built something beautiful from desperation and hope. When Lucy was 20 and courting a young rancher from the next county, she asked Emma how she had known Sam was the right choice. "I did not know," Emma admitted. "I was terrified and desperate, and I took a leap of faith. But your father proved every day that my faith was not misplaced. He showed up, he did the work, he loved us even when we were not easy to love. That is how I knew, not because I was certain at the beginning, but because he made it certain through his actions. Do you ever regret marrying him so quickly? Never. Not once. Your father gave me back my life. He gave you and Michael a childhood full of love instead of whatever Harold and Margaret would have provided. He gave us all a home. How could I regret that?" Lucy smiled. "I want that, what you and Pa have. Then do not settle for less. Find someone who shows up, who does the work, who loves you through the hard times as well as the good. Find someone who makes you better just by being beside you." It was advice Emma lived by every day. Sam was not perfect. He could be stubborn. He worked too hard sometimes. He had a temper when pushed far enough. But he loved her with his whole heart, and he showed it in 1,000 small ways every single day. When Emma was 40 and Sam was 45, they sat on the porch one evening, gray creeping into their hair, lines appearing around their eyes, their hands rough from decades of work. Their children were all grown or nearly so, building their own lives. The ranch was thriving. Everything they had worked for had come to fruition. "We did all right, did we not?" Sam said, his arm around Emma's shoulders. "We did better than all right. We built something amazing. Because you said yes to a stranger. Because you asked a stranger to trust you, and then you proved worthy of that trust every single day after." Sam kissed her temple. "I would do it all again, every moment, every challenge, every joy. I would choose this life every single time. So would I. They sat together as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, watching the land they had built together stretch out before them. The cattle grazed peacefully. The horses moved in the corral. The dogs dozed on the porch steps. Everything was exactly as it should be. Emma thought about that desperate widow standing in a cemetery, convinced her life was over. She thought about the terrified woman who had approached a strange cowboy and asked for help. She thought about all the moments since the fear, the hope, the gradual transformation from strangers to partners to lovers to the deep, abiding connection they now shared. "You know what I realized," Emma said quietly. "What is that?" "I thought love was something that happened to you, something you fell into and could not control. With Thomas, it felt that way, sudden and overwhelming. But with you, I learned that love is also something you build. We constructed this love like you built the house, one board at a time, one day at a time, until we had something solid and lasting." Sam pulled her closer. "I like that. Love is something we build together. We built a good life, Sam Irving. The best life, Emma Irving." As night fell and the stars came out, they remained on the porch, holding each other, content in the knowledge that they had faced every challenge together and come through stronger. The custody battle that had once threatened to destroy Emma's world was now just a distant memory, a storm they had weathered together. Their children were safe, happy, and thriving. Their ranch was successful. Their love had grown from a desperate arrangement into something deep and unshakable. They had built a legacy that would last generations, a family rooted in the Missouri soil and sustained by love, hard work, and the courage to take chances on each other. Years later, when Sam was dying peacefully in their bed at the age of 73, his children and grandchildren surrounding him, he held Emma's hand and whispered, "Best decision I ever made was talking to that scared widow outside a saloon. You gave me everything." Emma kissed his weathered cheek, tears streaming down her face. "You gave me everything too. You saved my babies. You loved me when I thought I would never love again. You built this entire life with me. Would do it again," he murmured. "Every day would choose you. I love you, Sam Irving." "Love you, Emma. Always." He died with her hand in his, surrounded by the family they had built together, leaving behind a legacy of love and resilience and the power of two people choosing to face life together. Emma grieved him deeply, but with gratitude for every year, every moment, every sunrise and sunset they had shared. She lived another 10 years, watching her grandchildren grow, tending the ranch with Lucy and Michael's help, and telling anyone who would listen the story of how a desperate widow and a cowboy with a good heart had found each other and built something beautiful from the ashes of tragedy. When Emma died at 81, surrounded by 3 generations of family in the house Sam had built, her last thoughts were of him, of that first meeting outside the saloon, of their wedding day, of the moment she realized she loved him, of the thousands of ordinary days that had comprised their extraordinary life together. The ranch passed to Lucy and her family, who continued the Irving legacy. Michael's children became successful businesspeople in St. Louis, never forgetting their roots. Thomas's son became a doctor, James's daughter a rancher, Sarah's children teachers and lawyers and cowboys, all of them carrying forward the lessons Emma and Sam had taught. That family is what you build. That love is a choice you make every day. That courage and kindness can transform desperation into hope. And in the cemetery near the ranch, Emma was buried beside Sam under the oak trees, their shared headstone reading simply, "Emma and Samuel Irving. They built a life together." Visitors to the ranch in years to come would hear the story of how it all began, how Emma's in-laws had taken her children when her husband died, how a cowboy had helped her get them back, and how that practical arrangement had blossomed into one of the great love stories of Missouri's ranching history. It became a local legend, a tale told at gatherings and passed down through generations, a reminder that sometimes the most unlikely beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. The ranch thrived for another century, always in Irving hands, always maintaining the values Emma and Sam had established: hard work, love, family, and the courage to fight for what mattered most. And though the world changed around it, that core remained constant, a testament to what two people could build when they chose to face life together, to love each other through every challenge, and to create a legacy that would outlast them both.